Hello and welcome. I am the Armchair Audiophile, and today we're going to be taking a closer look at the ifi xCAN. Now, you've seen this device in a few of my videos already, because this right here is one of my favorite products in the entire personal audio world right now. It's a battery-powered, fully balanced, dual mono headphone amplifier. It has 3.5mm single-ended, 2.5mm balanced, and aptX Bluetooth inputs, 3.5mm single-ended, and 2.5mm balanced outputs, as well as a few noteworthy features, namely a digitally controlled but functionally analog volume control, which is pleasantly, if not helpfully, indicated by this color-changing volume knob that steps up through a range of colors as you spin the ifi logo, adjusting your volume. As I understand it, this is some sort of digital control chip actuating an analog attenuator of some kind, again in single decibel increments, so that you can adjust volume without losing any bits as you would get on a purely digital volume control, like on something such as your Android smartphone. The xCAN also features 3D Plus mode, which as far as I can tell is some kind of proprietary analog crossfeed circuit, which for those of you who don't know, feeds a little bit of the left channel over to the right and a little bit of the right channel over to the left in just such a way to simulate some of the psychoacoustic effect of sitting in a room with speakers, which can help increase soundstage. Now, I found on this particular unit that it's really song dependent. Some tracks it really opens them up, some tracks it makes them sound completely wrong. I find that's more severe or more likely if the track has a lot of dramatic panning or very defined stereo effects, like some jazz tracks and things. It just sounds a little off. Or with something like Yoshi Horikawa, where the track is all over the place. Things are going from left to right all the time, and it just confuses the sound because channel separation was intended. A little much on 3D Plus. It also has X-Bass 2, which offers the ability to tastefully elevate the bass, the presence region of the mids, or both. It's actuated from this switch here in the rear. This is really interesting, and it allows you to tune the amplifier subtly to the characteristics of your headphones. I know some people are big fans of EQ. I'm a little bit of a purist, a little bit of a grumpy grandpa about digital EQ. I think since I'm pursuing sonic purity, and I've discussed in the comments with a few people that I consider reference to be almost synonymous with audiophile. I know that in some ways audiophile really just means enjoying high fidelity audio, but to me, part of that pursuit is the pursuit of accuracy in reproduction of the recording. So I like to minimize the number of digital algorithms that my files get run through on their way to my ears. So if I can have an analog solution to elevate the bass, the mids, treble, just a little bit, that is far preferable to me than using EQ on my DAP or on my laptop. Analog tone controls, I'm cool with, not a big problem as long as they have a true passive pass-through function. But again, I'm getting a little off topic from the xCAN. Point is, that is a lovely feature, and I will come back to that later as it pertains to my Ether C flows here and some stuff that I'm actually working on reviews for that you haven't quite seen yet. But coming back to the xCAN, this thing is capable of balanced output power up to 1 full watt per channel at 32 ohms, and it only falls off to 800 milliwatts at 64 ohms. So balanced, this thing is packing insane desktop levels amount of power. Desktop level amounts of power. Single-ended, still pretty impressive, up to 600 milliwatts at 16 ohms, falling off to 380 milliwatts at 32 ohms. It's not packing quite as much of a punch as the balanced output, but still more than enough to drive the vast majority of headphones and pretty much all IEMs that I'm aware of. The output impedance is less than 1 ohm single-ended and less than 2 ohms balanced. Ifi claims up to 18 hours of runtime using the line-ins, or up to 12 hours using the Bluetooth. And finally, perhaps the most important number, it retails for $299. I bought this particular unit back in March so that I could use my Ether C flows on the couch or in bed, and I haven't regretted spending the money for a second. Now, let's get something out of the way. That is sound. A lot of you are going to ask, Armchair Audiophile, how does the xCAN sound? Well, to talk about that, we kind of have to talk about how you talk about amplifiers. The archetypical amplifier has often been conceived of as a wire with gain, quote unquote, essentially a device which increases the power of any signal fed through it without imparting any new characteristics to that signal. In the past, this was more of an idea, but today, with amps like the THX AAA 789 and the JDS Labs Atom measuring effectively zero distortion, we can more or less achieve the archetype. When an amp does this well, there isn't much to describe about it sonically. It'll more or less sound like nothing, and fans of this type of amp think that's a very good thing. That's what they're trying to achieve. However, there are two kinds of amps out there, and the other kind are those which either intentionally or unintentionally do not sound like nothing. On the intentional side of things, you have many of Alex Cavalli's amp designs. They sound warm of neutral, just a tiny bit bloomy. Many are tube hybrid designs intended to be tube-rolled and changed to the preferences of the owner, and that is by design. If you have several amps in your collection, you may not want all of them to be perfect reference amps, just like you don't necessarily want a collection of all reference headphones. You collect headphones so that you can have different signatures and different overall presentations of music for different occasions. On the unintentional side of things, you have the Schiit Asgard 2, for example. It's not always easy to pinpoint the moment you outgrow a piece of audio gear, but the first time I plugged my Ether C flows into the Asgard 2, I pretty much immediately knew its days on my desk were numbered. It had served admirably up to that point. It drove my HE400Is great. It drove the THX100 Purple Hearts I used to have really, really well. T20 RP Mark IIIs, when those were still a signature that I cared to listen to, all performed fine with the Asgard 2. It's not a bad amp, but compared to the Micro iCAN Special Edition in my desktop rig right now, this thing's big brother, the ethers just sounded audibly slow hooked up to the Asgard. It's hard to really describe what that means, but attack and decay weren't quite as precise. Just pace, rhythm, and timbre were not as on point as these sounded, either on my Micro iCAN or on any of the amps I'd heard it on at RMAF 2018. And while I couldn't really replicate that with sort of lesser headphones, once I got up into the TOTL Summit Fi zone, the Asgard just couldn't keep up. Now, all of this is to contextualize the point that the xCAN here is the former kind of amp. It really sounds like close to nothing. It doesn't sound slow, dynamically compressed, hazy, veiled, distorted, and it doesn't sound warm, cool, rolled off, or accentuated anywhere in the frequency spectrum. It largely stays out of the way and just force feeds power into your headphones. What's really important with this amp is versatility of use cases and driving ability. This brings us full circle to where we started, with the power output and the feature set of this amplifier. Because imagine, you're somebody who commutes, you've got a set of IEMs. For example, I have the Campfire Audio IOs here. I'm working on a full review of these. The unboxing will be coming out this week. But let's say you've got a commute, you ride the train, maybe you walk to work, you want to stream Spotify or Tidal Masters or listen to podcasts, whatever you're really in the mood for on your way to work. You plug these in to the xCAN, you hook it up to your phone over Bluetooth, and it'll drive any pair of IEMs you own, balanced or unbalanced, pretty much to their maximum scaling. You get to the office, maybe you use the IEMs all day. Maybe you keep an office set of cans. You've got some Mastrop HE4XXs or some HD 580Xs, 58Xs. I don't know how you pronounce the 58X Jubilees properly. But maybe you get a set of those. Hook them up to this, keep streaming your Spotify. You might have a desktop DAC, hook up to YouTube out of your work computer, as blasphemous as that might be. But this will support any of those use cases. And then when you get home at the end of the day, you can hook up your $1,600 top-of-the-line headphones to the xCAN, grab, say, the HiBR5 and this really cool 4.4 millimeter Pentacon to 2.5 millimeter TRRS balanced cable, if I can get that to stay in focus. I will link to this in the video description because this is a game changer, and I absolutely love being able to run the R5's truly balanced line out to the xCAN for use with the ethers. But you don't even have to have all that. Maybe you have an older or just a single-ended DAP and you want to use that as your source. You can do that. That is an option. Maybe you have Galaxy S10e. You have a SD card slot still, unlike most of us, and you've got your whole collection on there, and you just want to stream it aptX. Maybe you don't have all high res. You've got CD quality 1644 FLAC, and you just want to stream that from your phone. This is going to do it for you. If you want to get really weird, these are my DT770 mod pigs. These started life as a 250 ohm set of DT770s that I found on eBay with a broken cable. I took them apart, removed all the factory wiring, installed 2.5 millimeter mono jacks configured for Hi-Fi Men HE400 series cables, and then proceeded to do a monstrous hack job of mounting them in the housing. However, this headphone will now accept a 1 meter, 2.5 millimeter balanced Hi-Fi Men HE400i cable, which I already had. I can hook this up to the xCAN through the xCAN in my back pocket and walk around listening to 250 ohm DT770s. If that is your thing, this will enable you to do that thing. Now, if the versatility of source and driving ability wasn't enough, once you include the 3D Plus and the X-Bass 2, adjustable for bass, presence region, or both, you can really use this amp to adapt one source or system to multiple headphones, multiple use cases, or multiple styles of music. For example, my Ether C flows here. They're extremely, extremely accurate. And while I love that most of the time, as you saw from my enthusiasm for the KZ-ZSX review, I appreciate some bass. I appreciate having a little bit of fun sometimes, and sometimes the Ether C flows don't quite have enough bass for the amount of fun I'm trying to have at a particular moment. Being able to activate X-Bass 2 and just with a one button press analog in, just a tiny bit of bass elevation, and it's really tasteful. I don't think it's doing anything above 50 hertz. And what it is doing is probably only 1.5, maybe 2.5 decibels. If that, it's very, very tasteful. It's harder to estimate what exactly it's doing in the mids. But I will say that, spoiler alert, there's a little bit of a dip in the mids on the Campfire IOs, and it really does help step that forward. Maybe you do have something with a primarily V-shaped signature. It's a little weird to say, but the Andromedas are a slightly V-shaped IEM. That's why the Andromeda S featured an improved mid-range driver. So maybe you like the sound of the Andromedas and you just want to step the mids forward every now and again, set the vocals forward from the mix. This will let you do that. Running out of breath here, but I think I've made my point. So to wrap up on the xCAN, it's an absolute juggernaut of a mobile amplifier. It can drive almost any headphone on earth. It sounds very clean, very neutral while doing so, and it can perform that job in such a vast array of use cases that it offers something for most audiophiles out there. Is it an ideal choice for something like, LCD3s or 600 ohm Bears? Probably not. That's this narrow sliver created by the almost any headphone on earth. But I think its performance more than justifies its $299 price tag, and I think if you're in the market for a mobile amplifier, particularly a balanced one, then this deserves your consideration. With that, I'd like to invite you back over the next week for the Campfire IO unboxing and eventually the HiBR5 full review. I'm not sure which is going to come out in which order. I'm also working on the Galaxy Buds, and I'd like to share that I have ordered a set of the Audeze LCD-1s, so I'll be able to share those with you in the very near future. Subscribe if that's something you're excited about, if you want to see me talk about those. Otherwise, that's it for me, the Armchair Audiophile, reminding you that life is too short for bad headphones.